Before I start this video, I want everyone to know that this list will most likely not contain every reference in Terraria, as there are simply too many of them to list all of them in one video. On very rare occasions, the player can find a sword in a rock called the Enchanted Sword, and this is a reference to the book The Sword and the Stone, and also a reference to the real and fake swords in Zelda A Link from the Past. The phase blades are taken from the lightsabers in Star Wars. The Falcon Blade is a cross-promotional item from the indie game Pixel Piracy. The bladed gloves are the same gloves that Freddy Krueger uses in A Nightmare on Elm Street. The Breaker Blade was inspired by the Buster Sword used by Cloudstrife in Final Fantasy VII. Excalibur was named after the sword used by King Arthur. The Beam Sword is a direct reference to the Master Sword used by Link in the Zelda franchise. Keybrand was based on the Keyblade used by Sora in the Kingdom Hearts series. Tizona was named after a sword used by the medieval knight Diaz de Vivar. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Horseman's Blade is a reference to the Headless Horseman featured in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Fetid Bagnaks, don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, were inspired by the Indian weapon called Bagnaka, still don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The sword Meowmere and the projectile that it shoots was heavily inspired by the internet meme Nyancat. The Rally was named after a real yo-yo by One Drop Yo-Yos. Code 1 was also named after a One Drop Yo-Yo. Amazon was named after the Amazon. Then there were many more yo-yos named after yo-yos by One Drop, such as Valor, Format C, Chick, Code 2, Gradient, and Yellets. Oh, and speaking of One Drop, here's a cool fact. The strongest yo-yo in the game, called Terrarian, will also soon become a reality thanks to One Drop. Kraken was named after the legendary sea monster of the same name. Gungnir was inspired by the spear used by Odin in Norse mythology. Tombogiri was named after the spear used by Honda Tadakatsu, who was a legendary Japanese general. North Pole was named after the North Pole. Enchanted Boomerang is a reference to Link's boomerang in Zelda, or Toad's boomerang in Reddit's previous game, Super Mario Bros. X. The Bloody Machete was inspired by the weapon that Jason Voorhees used in the Friday the 13th films. The Flamerang is a reference to the boomerang of the same name, used in the the Tasmanian Tiger games. The Light Disc was inspired by the Identity Discs in the Tron franchise. The Paladin's Hammer is a reference to Diablo 2, where the most common build for a Paladin was to throw magic hammers, or Mjolnir, don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the hammer used by the Norse god Thor. The Tao of Pao is a direct reference to the Taoism symbol. Sharanga was named after the bow used by the Hindu god Vishnu. The Daedalus Storm Bow was named after the Greek mythological inventor. The Flintlock Pistol was inspired by the real-life pistol of the same name. The Boomstick is a reference to the gun used in the Evil Dead movies. The handgun was inspired by the Colt M1911 pistol. Red Rider is a direct reference to the Red Rider BB gun. The SDMG is a reference to the game Edge of Space. The Vortex Beater was inspired by the Pulse Rifle from Aliens. The Stinger was inspired by the Rhino 5 from Ratchet & Clank A Crack in Time. The Elf Melter was heavily inspired by the M2 Flamethrower. The Heat Ray is a reference to the H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, in which Martians fire heat rays. The Charged Blaster Cannon is a direct reference to Mega Man and the weapon he uses, called the Mega Buster. The Flower of Fire is a direct reference to the Fire Flowers in Mario. The Medusa Head was inspired by Medusa from Greek legends. The Magic Dagger is a reference to a weapon used in the Castlevania titles. The Flower of Frost is again a Mario reference to the Ice Flowers. The Tempest Staff is a reference to the movie Sharknado. The Staff of the Frost Hydra was inspired by the Diablo 3 Wizard spell. Star Anise was named after the Asian spice. Molotov Cocktails are a direct reference to the weapons used by the Finnish army against the Russians in the Winter War of 1939. The Holy Hand Grenade is a direct reference to the famous grenade featured in the Worms games. The landmine was also inspired by the landmines in the Worms games. Hammersh is a direct reference to the weapon featured in the Terraria webcomic, The Legend of Max. The axe was heavily inspired by Gibson Flying V guitars. The Zappinator was inspired by the Nintendo Zapper for the NES. The Scythe is a reference to the anime Soul Eater. The Soul Scythe is a reference to a special attack in the anime Soul Eater called Kishin Hunter. And finally, Icemourne is a direct reference to Frostmourne from WoW. That's it for this list, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!